I watched my best friend trapped inside a burning steel coffin we called a tank. That was August of 1944, Normandy. A Tiger tank hit us from 800 yards. The round went through our Sherman like it was made of paper. Tommy was the driver. He did not die instantly. That would have been a mercy. My name does not matter anymore. I am just another old man with stories that fewer people want to hear every year. But I'm going to tell you this one anyway. About the M4 Sherman tank. About what it was really like to fight in one. About what we loved and what we hated and what we learned when the shooting started. I was a tank commander in the 3rd Armored Division. Spearhead Division, they called us. I commanded a Sherman from the beaches of Normandy all the way to Germany. 5 men in a steel box. That was my world for nearly a year. Now people argue about the Sherman. Was it a good tank? Was it a death trap? Should we have built something heavier, something with a bigger gun? They argue about armor thickness and gun penetration and mechanical reliability, like they are talking about cars or lawnmowers. But here's what I know. The Sherman kept me alive long enough to see my children grow up. And it killed my friends. Both things are true. And that is what I want you to understand. Let me take you inside. A Sherman tank had 5 crew members. The driver sat front left. He had his own hatch, a periscope, and 2 levers that steered the tank. Next to him was the assistant driver, who also operated the bow machine gun. In the turret was the gunner on the left, the loader on the right, and me, the commander, standing behind and above them with my head in the cupola. 33 tons of steel, rubber, and gasoline. Powered by a radial aircraft engine that sounded like angry bees in a metal drum. Armed with a 75mm main gun that could punch through most German tanks if you hit them in the right spot at the right range. Armor that was supposed to stop machine gun fire and shell fragments, but not much else. We called her Fury. Not very original, I know, but she was ours. The Army trained us for 6 months before we shipped out. They taught us how to drive, how to shoot, how to maintain the engine. They taught us radio procedure and tactical formations and how to work with infantry. But they did not teach us what it felt like to be inside when the rounds started coming in. Nobody can teach you that. The first thing you notice is the noise. The engine is loud enough that you need to shout into the intercom just to be heard. Then add the sound of the main gun firing, which is like being inside a church bell when someone hits it with a sledgehammer. Then add the sound of incoming rounds hitting your armor. Loud, sharp cracks that make your ears ring and your heart stop. The second thing you notice is the smell. Oil and sweat and cordite and fear. You can smell fear. It has a metallic taste in the back of your throat. The third thing you notice is how small it is inside. 5 men in a space the size of a small bathroom. You cannot move without bumping into someone. The loader is constantly swinging rounds from the ready rack into the breech. The gunner has his face pressed against the sight. The driver is hunched over his controls, and I'm standing in the cupola trying to see everything at once through a narrow slit while also commanding the tank and talking on the radio. When we landed in Normandy in late June of '44, I thought we were invincible. I had never seen combat. None of us had. We had trained on Shermans in England and thought we knew everything. The Sherman was faster than the German tanks, more reliable. We had more of them. The instructors told us that meant we would win. They were right about the numbers. We had thousands of Shermans, but numbers do not mean much when you are the one getting shot at. The bocage country in Normandy was a nightmare for tanks. Narrow roads between high hedgerows, ancient farm boundaries that had been growing for centuries until they were thick walls of earth and roots. You could not see more than 50 yards in any direction. The Germans would hide anti-tank guns or Panzer IVs in the hedgerows and wait for us to come around a corner. Then they would fire. Point-blank range. The first tank in the column usually died. I learned to hate being first. Our first real engagement was outside a town called Saint-Lô, July 10th. We were supporting an infantry advance. 3 Shermans in column on a narrow road. I was in the second tank. The lead tank was commanded by Lieutenant Morrison, a guy from Ohio who wanted to be a history teacher after the war. We came around a bend and Morrison's tank exploded. I did not see what hit it. One moment it was rolling forward. The next moment the turret was surrounded by fire. It had been hit in the ammunition stowage. The shells cooked off all at once. The turret blew 20 feet into the air. No one got out. We backed up fast. The third tank in our column tried to return fire but could not spot the enemy position. We called in artillery and eventually the infantry found the German anti-tank gun and cleared it. But Morrison and his crew were gone. 5 men. Just like that. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the ammunition stored inside our tank. 75mm rounds stacked in racks all around the fighting compartment. If we took a hit in the wrong place, we would cook off just like Morrison's tank. The British called the Sherman the Ronson, like the lighter. Some guys said it lit up too easily when it was hit. The Germans called it the Tommy Cooker. Both names meant the same thing. It burned. The problem was the ammunition storage. Early Shermans stored shells in dry racks along the sides of the hull. If the armor was penetrated, the shells would ignite. Once they started cooking off, you had maybe 10 seconds to get out, usually less. Later, they developed wet stowage. The ammunition was stored in racks surrounded by water jackets. If the armor was penetrated, the water would absorb some of the heat and give you more time to escape. It helped, but it did not solve the problem. Because here is the truth they do not tell you in training. When your tank gets hit hard, you do not have time to think. You just react. If the hit kills the engine or jams the turret or starts a fire, you have seconds to decide. Bail out or stay and fight. If you bail out too early, you leave your infantry without support and maybe they die. If you wait too long, you burn. I made that decision 11 times. 11 times our tank took hits serious enough that I had to decide whether to abandon or stay. 10 times I decided to stay. Once I decided to go. The time I decided to go was the day Tommy died. We were outside Caen, August. The British and Canadians were pushing south and we were supporting on the flank. The Germans were falling back, but they were not running. They would fight for every hedgerow, every farmhouse, every crossroads. We were advancing through an orchard when we spotted a Tiger tank hull down behind a stone wall, 800 yards away. The Tiger saw us at the same moment. A Tiger was a monster, 56 tons, armor up to 4 inches thick on the front, an 88mm gun that could kill a Sherman from over a mile away. Our 75mm could barely scratch a Tiger from the front. You had to hit it in the side or rear, or you had to get very close and hope you got lucky. We did not have time for tactics. The Tiger fired first. The round hit us low on the right front. It went through the armor, through the assistant driver's position, through the engine compartment, and out the back. The impact sounded like the world ending. Tommy was driving. He started screaming. The round did not hit him directly, but shrapnel and spalling, the fragments of armor that spray off the inside when you are penetrated, had torn into his legs. The engine caught fire immediately. Thick black smoke started pouring into the crew compartment. I yelled for everyone to bail out. The gunner and loader were already moving. I grabbed Tommy by his jacket and tried to pull him up through his hatch. But his legs were trapped under the controls. Or maybe they were just destroyed. I could not tell through the smoke. He was still screaming. The assistant driver, a kid named Rodriguez from Texas, was slumped over his gun, not moving. I did not know if he was dead or unconscious, but there was blood on the metal, on his uniform, even on the floor of the tank. The smoke was getting thicker. I could feel the heat from the engine fire. If it reached the ammunition, we had maybe 20 seconds before the whole tank cooked off. Tommy looked at me. Through the smoke and the pain, he looked right at me, and he said, "Get out." Just that. Get out. I let go of his jacket. I climbed out of the cupola, jumped off the tank, and ran. The Sherman exploded maybe 15 seconds later. The ammunition went all at once. The explosion threw me to the ground 30 yards away. When I looked back, the tank was a fireball. Tommy and Rodriguez never got out. I spent 3 days after that thinking I should have stayed, thinking I should have tried harder to pull Tommy free, thinking I was a coward. The battalion chaplain talked to me. So did my platoon leader. They both said the same thing. There was nothing I could have done. If I'd stayed, I would have died too. 5 dead instead of 3. But knowing that did not make it easier. They gave me a new tank, new crew. We kept fighting. By September, we had broken out of Normandy and were racing across France. The Sherman was good at exploitation, fast, reliable. It could go over 100 miles on a tank of gas, farther than most German tanks. The engine almost never broke down. We could outrun the German tanks and outmaneuver them. As long as we did not have to face them head-on, we had a chance. Then in December, the Germans counterattacked in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. We were rushed north to help stop the breakthrough. That was where I learned what the Sherman could really do. We fought in the snow and fog around Bastogne. Visibility was terrible. Engagements happened at close range. Sometimes you did not see the enemy until you were 50 yards away, sometimes less. That was where the Sherman was at its best, in close terrain where its speed and stabilized gun gave us an advantage. We could fire on the move better than most of them. The German tanks had better armor and bigger guns, but most of their crews had to stop to shoot accurately. We could keep rolling and pumping rounds down range. I remember one engagement on a forest road. We came around a corner and there was a Panther tank 40 yards away, broadside. Its turret was traversing toward us, but it was not fast enough. Our gunner, a sergeant from Pennsylvania named O'Brien, put 3 rounds into its side before it could fire. The Panther brewed up. We kept moving. That was how we survived. Speed, numbers, aggression. We did not try to trade shots with German tanks at range. We maneuvered. We flanked them. 3 or 4 Shermans would coordinate to attack a single Panther or Tiger from multiple directions. Usually 1 or 2 Shermans would die in the process, but we would win. That was the arithmetic of Sherman warfare. Trade 3 Shermans for 1 Panther, and it was a good deal, because we had 3 more Shermans waiting behind those, and the Germans did not have another Panther. The crews who died in those trades probably did not think it was a good deal, but that was the reality. By the time we crossed into Germany in 45, I had been in 4 different Shermans. The first one burned outside Caen. The second threw a track and was abandoned during the retreat in the Ardennes. The third took a Panzerfaust hit in a German village, and the entire crew except me was wounded. I got my 4th Sherman in March. I was 23 years old. I felt like I was 60. The war ended in May. I came home in July. I did not talk about the war for 30 years, not to my wife, not to my kids. I just wanted to forget. But you do not forget. You just learn to live with it. Now I am an old man. I visit tank museums sometimes. I see Shermans restored and painted and sitting peacefully under lights. Tourists walk around them, taking pictures. Kids climb on them. And I remember what it was like inside. The noise, the fear, and that smell in the air you never forget. Oil, smoke, sweat, and fear. People still argue about whether the Sherman was a good tank. Some say it was undergunned and underarmored, and we should have built something heavier. Others say it was the right tank for the war we fought. Mobile, reliable, easy to produce and maintain. Both sides have statistics and technical specifications and after-action reports to support their arguments. But here's what I think. The Sherman was a tool, like a hammer or a rifle. It did what it was designed to do. It broke through German defenses. It supported infantry. It won the war. But it was also a coffin for thousands of young men who never came home. Tommy was 19 years old. He wanted to be a mechanic after the war, work on cars, maybe open his own shop. Rodriguez was 18. He had a girlfriend back home who wrote in letters every week. Morrison wanted to teach history. He used to talk about how he would tell his students about the war, about what it was really like. None of them got the chance. The Sherman tank kept me alive. It gave me the chance to come home, to have a family, to grow old. I owe my life to that machine. But every time I see one, I remember the men who died inside them. I remember the smell of burning gasoline and cordite. I remember Tommy looking at me through the smoke and telling me to get out. And I remember that I did. I do not know if that makes the Sherman a good tank or a bad tank. What I know is that it was our tank. We fought in it. We died in it. We won the war in it. But the victory came at a price. And sometimes late at night when I cannot sleep, I wonder if we paid that price with the right currency. Would Tommy think it was worth it? Would Rodriguez? Would Morrison? I do not have the answer. I just have the memories, and the guilt, and the knowledge that I survived when better men did not. The Sherman was not perfect, but it was what we had, and we made it work. We made it work because we had no choice. That is what war is, not grand strategies or technical specifications. It is young men in imperfect machines doing impossible things because they have to. And some of them come home. And some of them burn. I'm one of the lucky ones. I got to come home. I got to live my life. But not a day goes by that I do not think about the ones who did not. The ones who are still in those tanks in my memory, frozen at 19 or 20 or 23 years old. That is what the Sherman means to me. Not armor thickness or gun caliber or production numbers. It means the friends I lost, the decisions I made, the things I saw that I can never unsee. If you enjoyed this story, or if it made you think, or if it helped you understand just a little bit what it was like, then maybe it was worth telling. Maybe Tommy and Rodriguez and Morrison and all the others are remembered for a few more minutes. That is all we can do for them now. Remember, and try to understand what they gave up so that we could have what we have. The Sherman tank. It was not the best tank of World War II, but it was our tank, and it did its job, just like we did ours.